All right, I would like to call to order uh, City of Lawrence Redevelopment Commission Public Assembly. We're in the public assembly room, but for Thursday, March 14th, 2022. Joe, I am not there in person. Do we have a quorum?
Yes, everybody's present.
All right, and we have a quorum. Joe, would you like to read a statement? Do you still need to read those statements?
No, I do not. Thankfully, we are no longer under an emergency order, so statement's not necessary anymore.
Okay, perfect. All right, so first on our agenda is the approval of minutes from last month. And those have all been sent out to all of us, and I'm assuming and hoping everyone has had a chance to read and review those. Are there any comments or concerns on the executive session meeting from last month? And if not, may I have a motion to approve?
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second for approval of the executive session minutes for March 10th. Because we have a member present via Zoom, we'll do a roll call vote for approval. David Blunt.
Approved.
Cheryl Sullivan.
Approved.
Jerry Clifford.
Approved.
Melissa Howard.
Approved.
Ray Rahana.
Approved.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And now for the regular meeting from last month. Are there any comments or concerns after reviewing the minutes? And if not, may I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second for approval of the regular minutes from March 10th. Roll call vote. David Blunt.
Approved.
Cheryl Sullivan.
Approved.
Jerry Clifford.
Approved.
Melissa Howard.
Approved.
Ray Rahana.
Approved.
All right. Moving on, claims and purchase orders that has been sent out. Hoping and assuming everyone has had a chance to take a look at those. Does anyone have any questions or comments on that? If not, may I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion and a second for approval of claims and purchase orders for payment. We'll do roll call vote. David Blunt.
Approved.
Cheryl Sullivan.
Approved.
Jerry Clifford.
Approved.
Melissa Howard.
Approved.
Ray Rahana.
Approved.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we will start going over our agenda, and I'm going to turn the meeting over now to Mr. Dan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before I start down through my extensive list, and it has gotten more extensive as the day has gotten longer, I first want to take a moment and particularly acknowledge two of our commissioners, and that is Commissioner Sullivan and Commissioner Blunt. A bond hearing and work through the Finance Committee and subsequently to the Council could not have happened any better or been any more successful, and I view it 99% because of your efforts. And particularly Commissioner Sullivan, it couldn't have been any more eloquent or direct, and I want to thank you for all the effort you obviously put into that, and
Pleasure.
and for all the commissioners that attended. As you'll hear from Tyler, the timing couldn't have come any later to get close to done what we wanted to have done. And the efforts that both of you put into that, and for the whole commission to have been present, I think it meant all the difference in the world to our success, and I want to thank you each for that. I'm going to yield to Mr. Murphy on Old Business 1 and 2 to report where we are as the recording secretary relative to the closings of the 8013th and 8022 properties.
Yeah, thank you. Similar news on both. The 8013 East 46th Street property, that's the property that received approval from the council to be sold to MetroNet at their meeting last month. That property is now closed, and the proceeds are in the mail and headed to our office. We should receive those within the next day or so. So that property's been closed, and we're just waiting to receive proceeds. But they have already begun development. If you drive by that parcel now, they've got trucks on there, and they're beginning the work to put their shed up. And if you've been driving around, especially the Fort this past couple days, you'll see that they're also out in our community installing fiber every day, and they're doing it very quickly and very efficiently, and not leaving many traces behind when they're done. So they've done a great job there. On the 8022 East 46th Street parcel, again, same news. That property's been closed. That was closed last Wednesday. We've received the proceeds. I picked up a check from the title company last week. So that matter is fully closed, and Mr. McDowell has now had the keys turned over to him, and he's beginning work to go ahead and renovate that old building to outfit for his office for his FBT Computing Services company. So both of those are great successes, and thank you especially to our president, David Blunt, for meeting me on multiple occasions, as well as our secretary, Mrs. Sullivan, to get some signatures in order so that we could get those properties closed in a timely fashion. So thank you to both of you guys as well for your help in that. Back to you, Mrs. Zerner.
Thank you. IDEM, Myers Plastics, we have submitted to IDEM what we think will be the last reiteration. They've indicated that they're considering our final offer, if you will, of closeout for the Meyer Plastics situation. It looks to me like it'll get approved, but it's in their hands, and we'll see. No news on the Mills Supply free Jeep parking. That's still under negotiation. The Pendleton 56th Street parcel separation we've talked about now for about a year and a half. The good news is DMD did approve the plat at the plat hearing committee. We're waiting to receive the final copy of that back, the official copy of that, and then Banning is preparing the final legal description to be recorded. So Caitlin tells me it's possible that by somewhere around the 1st or the 15th of May, that'll get transferred to the RDC, and then we can create the public offering. And we actually have 3 parties right now very interested in that project and are waiting for us to issue that notice. So we're not going to hold it very long, as long as we can get through the process. The next item is old business, but it's not on your agenda. It's just been negotiated by me in the last 24 hours. I've had council review it. If you'll all recall, we sold the 3 parcels on Franklin Street to the developer for the food business at 4400 block. That offer actually expires April 30th. They're still needing more time to work through the group that they're negotiating with. They came back to me and asked for an extension until November 30th. I balked, only to the extent that the whole reason we sold it, one of the reasons we sold it at the time is the commission wanted to get out of maintaining it and paying the cost to maintain it. And I suggested that 2 things needed to occur for the extension. One is their earnest money of that they've already paid of $10,000 should become non-refundable if we exercise this extension. And Joe went back and looked at what the invoices were for the monthly maintenance of that, and it was just about $2,000, a little more. They've agreed to add to the earnest money $2,610 of non-refundable money. That would basically cover our costs of maintenance of that through that time frame, which makes our net cost 0. So I'm asking for a motion to approve the extension, or to extend the Stern and Stern Properties purchase agreement via this second amendment, and so that Mr. Blanc can sign that for us and we can extend that open. I'll take any questions.
And that'd be extended through November 30th.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I don't think there's any way this deal is going to come apart, and I think everything that I'm hearing behind the scenes and some confidentiality I have to maintain, it's going to be the city's interest. So I would like to support this. And we certainly don't want the property back.
So, just a quick question that's a little
Okay.
off base. So, yeah, I'm understanding that you still have the ability to negotiate the terms of the sale between now and November, is that?
No, sir.
You don't?
Terms have already been negotiated. We've already agreed to a price. What I did negotiate was the terms of the extension or the Second Amendment,
Okay.
so that the deposit at this point becomes non-refundable, which it has been refundable up to this point, subject to their due diligence, and that we got an additional $2,610 added to that deposit to cover the cost of maintenance between now and November.
And the reason I asked the question is that I don't know if they do this with regularity, but they've stored materials outside the building in the front, and it doesn't look good.
This group is not.
Where the grocery store was. Am I
Well,
in the wrong place?
that may be the tenant that's there now, but the developer does not own that yet. It's not his materials.
Okay.
Developer hasn't taken title.
Okay,
So I'm looking for a motion to approve a Second Amendment to the contract for the purchase and sale of the Franklin Road property.
so moved. Get it done.
May we have a second, please?
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call vote for approval. David Blunt,
Approved.
Cheryl Sullivan,
Approved.
Jerry Clifford,
Approved.
Melissa Howard,
Approved.
Ray Rohana.
Approved.
Great, thank you.
Joe, I'll hand this to you so you can get it signed from David. And then let's send that to Brad Smith. Send me a copy. Next, I will tell you that Amerifence did secure Banning Engineering to put a master plan together of their site circulation and proposed improvements. We were supposed to have a meeting today at 3 o'clock that got canceled because of some conflicts in their schedule. I expect to have that meeting in the next week, and by the time we all meet, be able to share with you what Amerifence's plans are relative to the development of their Franklin Road property. So that's next on the agenda.
And we're still in line to get on the southern end of that property,
Get the road alignment property.
so that we have an alignment to take care of Record Street.
Which brings me to the most exciting news of the day for you all, something I think you'll really appreciate. This morning, we held the interviews to select the preliminary design firm for the Trades District. And representing the RDC was Mr. Murphy and myself. Mr. Blount was invited, but due to schedule conflict, he didn't make it. But Joe and I covered that. We also, because I wanted to be totally transparent, and we're going to need other people, other bodies of the city to participate, we invited the city council to participate. And Lisa Chavez was invited, but she couldn't make it, but she had Sean Denny appear, so Sean Denny represented the council. We also had invited utilities and the Board of Works, neither of which chose to participate, but they were invited. Then scoring the interviews was, I always call him Chief David Hoffman as Deputy Mayor, Mayor Collier, of course Sean Denny already mentioned, Sri Venugopal as the City Engineer, Scott Salisbury as the Director of Utilities, Superintendent of Utilities, and myself. Both of the firms interviewed very well, but one just absolutely blew it out of the water compared to everybody else, and that firm was HWC Engineering. When the final scoring was complete, HWC scored 560 and V3 scored 419. The preliminary engineering cost, we haven't finished the scope up yet, but it's going to be just a little bit north or south of $600,000. And we expect that work to be complete right around the first year to the first quarter, which includes design criteria for the sound wall and all the many, many aspects we've talked about to get us to know what it's going to cost to complete design and finish and start construction, which will also put us in position to start to look at the financing aspects. And HWC had to put together a plethora of information of where they thought they could go help us find matching grants, some as much as 70 or 80% of certain items. So I think we'll have a lot to talk about. I think one of the things this body should probably consider is assigning one member as a commissioner to attend the project meetings and kind of be a participant, since this is an RDC project. We'll probably have those meetings during the week, during a weekday. So I don't know what the commission wants to do with that, but I would welcome at least one member of the commission, if not two, sitting in on those meetings. We can't make it a quorum because we're not going to, don't want to conflict with open door law, but nonetheless, we have one or two members of the RDC. Since it's your money, I think that would make sense. So I'll leave that up to President Blount or the officers to decide what they want to do with that. So today, I am seeking a motion to accept the selection of HWC Engineering as the firm to provide the preliminary design, right-of-way, and survey work that we've requested in our RFP, subject to the final negotiation of the scope of work and a contract to be reviewed by our council. So I need to be able to make notice to the firm by the first week in writing that they've been selected, so that we can proceed with developing that scope and getting a contract for our council to review. So I'm just looking simply for a motion to select HWC Engineering for the preliminary design work. Are there any questions? I might make a couple other elaborations. Both firms submitted reasonable WB/MBA minority participation. So we will have those presented as part of the project. I think you'll be exceptionally excited at the concepts of how the architecture and the transportation, the green elements, the sidewalks, their concepts towards bicycle paths, the way it's just going to totally transform the city even more than I envisioned from what was presented today. And you'll all be a part of that as we move forward.
Could you explain a little bit more of the scope that they will be under?
Yes, it's very.
None of us have seen the proposals or.
You should have had copies of the RFPs when we sent them out. I thought sure we included that to all of you, but that's been 2 or 3 months ago now. And I would be glad to be sure you see those. In fact, Joe and I can send you their RFP responses if you'd like to see them. The scope, and I'm sorry if we hadn't done that. I thought that had been done, but maybe we missed that. But the scope is extremely extensive. It's to provide all the conceptual design relative to water, wastewater, stormwater, roads, infrastructure, green design, right-of-ways. It's to help us identify primarily, to start with, what is the right-of-way we're going to have to acquire, how much real estate we're going to have to acquire. It's survey. It's just a myriad of, it's also environmental investigations of all that property that we're going to have to acquire. Do they have any environmental issues up front? We have to deal with that. It's extremely, it's also the design, it's also the architectural design of the retaining, or the sound retention wall. But another thing that Sri and I want to change in the scope that's been proposed, we have not been successful in getting good quotes for the drainage ditch we've all talked about many times down and the reason is that as there's no design been done for that. So everybody's loading these great big cover your butt factors, pardon me, in their numbers, contingencies. We want to include design of what that drainage ditch requires. So I guess, Commissioner Sullivan, the best I can tell you, the scope's extremely extensive beyond what anybody would have imagined. Of course, it's old infrastructure. But I would be glad to be sure that by tomorrow, each of you receive a copy of HWC's response. I think that'll answer your question really specifically. Is that good enough? What you're looking for?
To add on, if I can, just a little bit to what I think Cheryl's after. if we were to say that, I'm having a hard time framing this motion. So the motion would be defined by the RFP, which I think is what you've said, and in terms of what they would do. The motion for the activities.
No, I think what I would prefer that you did, because I think they did a much better job and went way beyond the RFP.
Well, and that's what I was going to say, and the next part of it would be, and their response, which we haven't seen.
Yeah, I would ask you to to make the motion to select HWC based upon their proposal response. It's extremely extensive, and we'll give that to you as a copy, but and then if it means that much to you, I can go up and get a copy and print it right now if it's important to you, but I thought you'd received that, and I apologize if you have not, but it's very extensive. It will far exceed anything that we've talked about to date, so I think you'll be exceptionally comfortable when you see it.
So is there, part of their RFP is to actually address, when they're talking about infrastructure, the actual layout of the entire property?
The layout of the properties and the condition and the upgrade, the sizing, all of those things that we're going to need to be able to develop the park. It's also coordination with NDOT of the new boulevard. It's traffic related to the circulation. It's a massive amount of work.
And so what type of communication is within the proposal back to us, or do we have any
Absolutely. So
approval or modification
at
or something?
At every point, and that's why I'm suggesting in the progress meetings we have representing, but they are, in their proposal, they will be at the RDC meeting every month, at the actual RDC meeting. So we get to tailor everything down to what we want to do near the end.
And you're satisfied that they are going to address the drainage issues?
Absolutely. That's a major portion of it.
Okay.
Everything that we've talked about for the last year and a half is in their proposal response, plus probably 30% more. It is extensive.
Does their RFP also have a company background included in it?
Yes.
Okay.
To give you an idea, they brought 9 experts from every division into the interview. And we should have brought it to show you, as a closing document, they brought a 2025 newspaper, year 2025, what it was going to, yeah, Chief Hoffman may have it. You might share that, Chief. It's really, really cool. Of what the headlines are going to be in Lawrence in 2025 after the completion of this project.
Can I elaborate a little bit more on what we heard this morning? The presentations that the scoring committee heard, both groups were tasked with explaining their proposals in person this morning. And what we asked them to do was to present the team from each group that will actually manage the project and perform the work. And the first group had 6. V3 had 6. HWC had probably 12 or 13 people there. We asked them to affirm their commitment to minority and diversity participation by explaining how they are to contribute to the city's commitments towards inclusion. We asked them what they need from the city and the RDC to assure the successful design and planning process. We asked them what information that they would need from the city to prepare in advance to allow for an aggressive launch. On day 1 of the award, what would what would their priorities be in terms of their very first tasks? We asked them to present a project schedule complete with time constraints and other what they called red flags. So what might the unanticipated hurdles be in the design process? We asked them to present an anticipated payment and draw schedule to allow the city and the RDC to anticipate cash flow requirements. And finally, we asked them to explain precisely how they would assist the city in looking for grants and other funding sources to leverage. And these were all part of the both groups' presentations. I just felt like you might want to have a better understanding of what's behind Dan's recommendation to go with HWC. And as one of the scorers, I can tell you my personal opinion, not being a subject matter expert in this field whatsoever, but I felt like HWC clearly outperformed and out-explained the answers to all of these questions. So with that said, I just thought I would give a little more context to Dan's recommendation for a motion.
We have two things. We have a copy of their actual presentation today at the interview, and we also have a copy of their formal proposal. And I'll be sure that Joe forwards those to everybody within the next 24 hours. Again, the motion that I'm asking you to make is only valid to allow us to start to negotiate a contract that you're going to have to approve formally anyway. So I don't think I'm putting you in jeopardy by asking you to at least make that selection.
And I don't think I don't feel like you're putting us in jeopardy at all. I'm struggling with how to word the motion.
Let's make it more simple than I originally started, if it's okay with council. Maybe, Bruce, you want to weigh in, but the motion I'm asking to make is simply to select HWC to perform the Trades District preliminary engineering, subject to approval, subject to a later approval by this commission of the scope and contract to be negotiated.
If you'd said that slower, I would have written it down and made the motion.
Would you like to make, am I doing all right, or would you like to move?
You have it recorded?
I beg your pardon?
I'll be able to go back and
Would you?
transcribe the words so that it's reflected in the minutes.
Okay.
The motion will be reflected correctly in the minutes if you just want to make the motion.
I've just made the motion.
Thank you.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call vote for approval. David Blunt,
Approved.
Cheryl Sullivan,
Approved.
Jerry Clifford,
Approved?
Melissa Howard,
Approved.
Ray Rohana.
Approved.
I appreciate your trust. This just happened an hour or two ago. I wish I'd had more time, but if we wait another month, we're really behind the scenes. I will assure you that Joe will have all that information to you, if not today, by tomorrow.
I'll have it to you tonight.
And I think you'll be overwhelmed by the quality of what you're going to see. And if you have any questions, just call me.
Thank you, Dan. And thank you, Chief.
Yes, I really appreciate it, Deputy Mayor Hoffman, very much. So the last item to come before us is the update on the issuance of the tax revenue bonds, and I'm going to ask Controller Dowdett to address, and also he's going to provide an updated financial outlook for you all.
I'm going to start right off by punting to Bob actually here. He wasn't originally going to make it, but I think it'd be best for him to give a brief update, if you can, on where we stand on the bonds.
Sure. Good afternoon. Right after the council approved the bond issue, we contacted the bank, got them some information. They have followed up with some questions. There are some numbers we need to verify, but we're in this good discussions with the bank right now. It's not wrapped up. I hope we can get it wrapped up by the end of next week so that we can still look at a closing by the end of April, but it's just the process at this point. I will say we have probably lost the refunding component. Rates have moved so much just in the last 30 days that we probably wouldn't see savings by doing that refunding, but we can still structure the new piece around the old debt service, and that shouldn't really hurt us at all.
So it sounds like the total new money we'll have for the projects is still going to be the 2.1.
Talk in the mic, would you please? Thank you.
The total new money is still going to be 2.1.
Yeah, right now we're still looking at the par value of the new piece at 2.5, and then once we reduce it by the debt service reserve fund and cost of issuance, we should still be in that same range.
So if I understand what you're telling us, just to be sure I understand, you're telling us that rates have moved enough that it's not in our interest to refund the original bonds.
That's right.
Correct.
But that we still have a strong enough portfolio, interest rates haven't moved enough that we can add about 2.1 million net in new money. Is that correct?
That's what we're looking at right now. When I ran the new money piece of it, I used a higher interest rate, so I think we're still below that interest rate. So depending on what happens in the next week, if it stays fairly calm, we should be in good shape.
So let's just say it's the 2.1 number. What is the number of the old money piece at this point in time? What's the balance of that?
I believe we still had about 600,000 of bonds outstanding on the old piece.
Okay. Any questions?
Yes. The rates that you suggest, the range of rates that you suggested in the public meeting, are we within that range or the 2.1?
Yeah, currently we are. The old bonds were issued at a 3% rate.
Right.
And when we started the process, we thought we could be in the 2.5% to 2.75%. We lost that in the last couple of weeks. I was looking at the new money piece being between 5 and 6%. We're still below that 5% rate, I believe.
So how far are we away from a lock? How do we nail this down?
We are probably in the 4% range.
I think the question that Commissioner Clifford is asking is
Timing.
how fast can we get this done to be sure we lock this in?
Oh, well, again, I hope that we can wrap up negotiations with the bank next week. And once they're comfortable with everything, they'll lock it in at that point, and then that gives us the week or two to get closing done. So I hope next week we can get a locked-in rate.
He hopes that next week we can get a locked-in rate, next week.
Okay. What would prevent us from doing that? That's what I was...
At this point, I hope there's
I'm trying
nothing
to
that
figure
would
out what the
prevent that.
roadblock is.
There is no roadblock. They got the approval, started negotiating with the bank. It's just the bank going through the paperwork and what they do. So from what I understand, they're just waiting on the bank to get that final negotiation and lock that in next week.
Okay. Well, am I missing something here, Dan? It was approved by council, some time ago. And we could have started, if you will.
Is there any reason, Bob, this has been delayed, not locked in at this point in time?
What's caused the delay?
They have, once the underwriter is comfortable with the numbers and everything that's going on, it goes through their credit committee, which they haven't been to yet. There were some anomalies with some of the numbers in prior years that they're just trying to get comfortable with.
Okay, well, my concern is that rates are moving very quickly right now, as to his point. And it can cost, well, obviously it costs a lot of money.
I talk to them every day to try to get it finished. At this point, we're just at their speed. We just need for them to get comfortable and get it locked in. I have a meeting with them tomorrow. Hopefully we can get it done.
But there's nothing that we can do, there's nothing we're doing to prevent or to delay this at all. There's nothing we can do to speed it up. It's all on the bank side.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm familiar with usual and customary. How long does this process typically take?
I don't know if, did Bob hear the question?
He's thinking about it.
Yeah, in a process like this, we knew that if we got approval, it was going to be at that last council meeting. We had hoped to have it closed and done by the end of the month, so once we had final approval, less than 30 days.
So to give you a little bit, and maybe I'm going where I shouldn't go here, but I've done that before. To give you a little bit of, Bob had put out an email earlier today to Bruce, Joe, Tyler, me, some of those discussions, and to give you an idea of what he's working with to get closed. While the projected revenues for 22 and beyond would provide a comfortable coverage amount, annual TIF revenues have decreased some over the last couple of years. Collections in 2020 were $512,841, and based on the current avian tax rate would drop to $408,000. While there's been some moderate growth in the allocation area, the adjustments to the base assessed by the value by the county has increased by $16 million, thereby reducing the increment. So I think what Bob's trying to do is assure the finance committee at the bank, which hasn't met yet, and they only meet every couple of weeks, that even though those adjustments are being made, that with all the improvements and everything that's going on within the district and the value, we still have plenty of coverage for the bonds. Is that fair, Bob?
Yes, yes. If we were purely looking at the 2022 number, I think we'd be fine. They just want explanations of the prior numbers. And so that's what we're working with them on right now.
And then, so the timing of it, the meeting's next week, right?
He believes that he'll have a lock next week on the rate.
Yeah. Thank you. Could you email us when we get that?
Certainly.
Yeah, once we get that, I will make sure Joe and Dan know and get all that information to you. I will absolutely keep you updated.
Great. Thanks, Bob.
Any further discussions on that? If not, Tyler, you can continue.
So we'll jump into what is a real quick snapshot of a quarterly update. So I believe you created copies for everyone. So you actually see what Bob's talking about.
Let me interrupt you to say that Joe only got that about an hour ago when that went out by email.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
So some of these people may not have seen it yet.
They've got physical copies.
Oh, they've got physical copies.
They've got, yeah.
Yeah. And next time I'll just send.
Made sure to make copies.
PDF. I wanted to check with you first that this was all you needed, but
Good.
So I just left you with a hard copy. So if you're looking at this and you see the 2018 column, so the first block there before the black bar is a annual kind of statement of revenue and expense for 18 through 2021, and the chart is more of a visual to kind of see where your cash balance has gone every year. Obviously, things have been on the uphill. So in 2021, we ended with 1.5 million, which is our all-time high in the capital fund, which is a good thing. Now, if you look at the revenues, this does start to highlight, specifically in that TIF Pendleton Pike column. In 19, you start to see the revenue dropping, and that's where Bob is now pinpointing and discussing with that bank on why has our TIF started to shrink, and that was a reassessment of the base value, so he's working on that. So that's kind of a year-end recap, and if we jump into the quarterly comparison, this is just to kind of keep you in touch with where you were this time in prior years. So the light green is the first 4 years that you see on the annual side of things, so you're on the upswing. Q1 2022 is a slight decline, and that's just reflective of the free G payment. Other than that, if you back that out, you're on the same trajectory you've been for the last 4 years. So overall, we're in good financial shape. That's just a slight decline that was anticipated in the projections with that free G payment. So overall, we're in good shape. We'll have more long-term projections once we have the bonds locked in and we've got a sealed debt service schedule. We can start to do longer projections, but that's all I have. If you have any questions, I'm here for.
Good.
Pretty quick, but overall, things look good. Makes life easier.
I'm looking at Commissioner Sullivan. She always so analytical about this.
I'm still looking at this, so go ahead.
No,
Since we just got it.
let's wait.
Tyler, do we have an estimate on what our additional debt service will be with the new debt coming on, just based off rough numbers?
That was off the 5% that Bob had put together. So I had the Series B debt schedule was initially. And so again, we're gonna have to restructure it, it sounds like, Bob, where we'll probably wrapping a little bit of this debt, but based off of the way he had the Series B bonds listed, you start low and then you work your way up to a debt payment of $263,000, but you start off on the low end around 70 grand a year. So again, without knowing where we finalize everything, that's kind of a rough estimate on the 5%. If we come in lower, you know, it's on the rate, it's better for us, so.
And that's 70 up to 260, that's new money?
Yep, that's all new money.
I have a question just because I'm fairly new to council. The TIF for Monarch, there's not line item there, but
That's not a TIF, that's not a TIF that we have access to do anything with. It's 100% pledged to cover their project.
Yeah.
okay.
So
We're only using
the template I worked with had that line there, but technically for this fund, it's a pre-pledged set of revenue to the Monarch debt that's outstanding. So the full financials have that fund on there, but it's always just a wash. There's nothing we can do with that money. Yeah. Let's pay the debt.
Everybody good? Okay, thank you, Tyler.
Thank you.
Next item I have for you is another item I may have mentioned briefly, but I will mention last month, but I'll reiterate. Today we had a meeting with Best Equipment. They're going to do a huge major expansion, may actually close to double the size of their facility. That is in our TIF. It's in the Pendleton Pike TIF. And it's my anticipation that they will want some form of developer-backed bonds or something to help them with their project. I can't imagine there's anybody else we'd rather support, being how great of a steward they've been to the city and how they look. So I'll keep you abreast of that, but that project could be north of $5 million. So we'll see how that works. Wow. And the last item I had is just a matter of asking if this is something you would like. Mike Webster has offered to host this group for a tour of the Frigi facility. It is pretty stunning, and you all worked your hearts and paid a lot of money to make that happen. So I just wanted to ask you if you would like to have maybe an executive session, let's say at 3 o'clock or 3:15 next week, and next month.
next month.
Ahead of our meeting. Next meeting. Would you like to have a meeting an hour ahead out there just to walk through the Frigi facility and then come back here and have our meeting, if that's something you would all enjoy?
On May 11th, that'd be great.
So, Joe, let's reach out to Mike and see if we can schedule a tour for this group at 3 o'clock ahead of our next month meeting. I think you would all appreciate seeing what you made happen.
Right.
That's all I have, Mr. President.
Dan, just a quick question. Did the 4711 German Church closed as scheduled on March 11th?
Yes.
Did it?
It did, yes.
It's 100%.
Sorry about not mentioning that. Yes, that closed on the day after our last meeting, and we got the proceeds that day, so we're even on that.
So I'm not sure how clear I was. I'll backtrack for a minute. The one major item we committed to ourselves last year that we do not have done is the clean out of the drainage ditch along the CSX track. And just to remind you, we had one quote that was plus or minus $500,000. We had two other firms that were vacillating and kind of giving us a number, but they were throwing these great big numbers out there. And well, there's something like, we don't even know, there's something like 15 to 18 drainage outlets into that ditch, but the trees are so extensive, nobody really knows what's in there. And everybody's hedging on how much material they're going to have or whatever. So we think we'll get far better quotes that will probably more than offset the cost of the design. And it's our intent to put the design to do that drainage ditch in the scope of the new trades district contract. We get that knocked out earlier, that'll just kind of be a one-off. We'll get that out earlier as a first phase deliverable. Then we can actually put that out for bid, and everybody will be looking at the same documents, and I think all the contingencies and all that stuff will go away. So just want you to know that I'm aware that we don't have that done, but I want to do it in the right way at the least expense to this group and be sure we get what we get. Might also share with you that there are two parties interested, since you paid for the drainage study, the wetland study. There are two parties now showing interest, strong interest in the parcels behind the 4423 Shadeland parcel. If you remember the Kaido and Nidco properties, we have two prospects for those right now that are actually negotiating with the realtor. And Joe and I are going to take a walkthrough next week of the 4423 property with drone deck officials to be sure that they are moving forward in a swift enough manner, logical manner that meets the objectives we all had, so we can report back to you next month on that.
Excellent.
I think that's all I have, but I'd take anybody's questions on anything that's outstanding.
Maybe unrelated. Casey Bertram was involved with the drainage ditch,
They were the one quote we got.
They provided a quote.
and so they're going to put that to the side now. They're not
Yep.
going to do anything?
And not only that, it's been long enough that I don't think their quote's good to this point anyway.
Okay, thank you.
But I think I will ask Joe to send them a note, just to be courteous. We appreciate your quote. Here's where we are. One other thing I may share, because you all, it's not really you all directly, but you may want to attend next week's BZA meeting, which is on Tuesday night, right, Joe?
Yes.
So we think of storage units, and everybody says, we don't need another storage unit. But if you're downtown Sarasota or Fort Lauderdale, there are storage units that look like high-rise complexes. I wish I'd have brought the pictures down for you. They're stunning. Have elevators, they're climate controlled, they're cool,
Brick facade.
brick facades, fully landscaped. They look like something that's going to be in downtown Carmel. There's a proposal right now by a developer to put one of those units next to the old post office on 56th Street.
Really?
Up there on east, in an area that we have turned down at least 4 developments because of noise, mixed use primarily, drainage issues. We thought it'd reduce the property values of the neighborhood. This is a development that'll be probably close to $10 million. It's an incredible development. When that was first filed for next week's hearing, you can imagine that social media picked it up and everybody says, we got to go protest this storage unit. We can't have a storage unit. There's a group out there with that kind of momentum. I will tell you that this is one of the most beautiful things to be ever constructed in Lawrence, and it'll totally upgrade the values of that real estate around it, and that those are total misconceptions. So if there was anything that's going to affect our work, I think the approval or the denial of this project is going to say an awful lot to other potential developers trying to elevate, that could potentially elevate Lawrence. And I would welcome you to attend that meeting and listen for yourselves and make your own decisions. But I think that's going to be an extremely important meeting for this city. I'll make you aware of that. Any other questions for me?
Is that a project that comes before this group, or is it
No,
the council?
it's outside of our jurisdiction. It doesn't even go really before the city council unless it goes before the BZA, and of course they have the final authority if they want to challenge their own appointments. But I think hopefully it'll get resolved in the BZA.
Coordinator.
But that's on next week's agenda. It's anything but a storage unit like any of us have ever seen in Lawrence.
Do you already know the specifics?
Yes.
How many stories?
2.
I knew you were going to ask. I wish I'd have brought that down.
It's 2. Would you like me to go
is
get
it
a
2?
It's 2 stories, yeah.
Yeah, if you don't mind, run up and get that for them so they can see it. We actually have the renderings for it.
Want to adjourn first, or?
No, just run on up and we'll see if there's any other comments. Joe, on second thought, I think you're correct, Joe. Let's adjourn. We're so close, and then you can run up and get it, and we'll show it to anybody that's got interest.
Joe, is there any way that you could send us a note on it?
Actually, we could send
I'd be happy to send you the digital copies as well. I'm going to go back up to my office right after this meeting and send you the copies of the proposals for the 2 competing firms. I can send you the digital copy of the rendering.
Doing that electronically?
Yep.
Send that electronically. I'll send you PDFs of the design for
We'll
the
send you
storage
PDFs
facility
of the
as well.
design, but it's incredible development that will make us look just light years ahead of where we are. So to have this social media presence, and for some reason, one of the councilors has taken a position to lead this, and it just doesn't make any sense.
Dan, who are they presenting to next week?
BZA.
Board of Zoning Appeals. Yeah, they need a variance for their current zoning.
I got you now, thank you.
And this is a variance for industrial use?
It's actually a variance to
C7,
C7, commercial C7.
It's currently zoned C4. They're looking to move it to C7, which accommodates storage.
Where's the property again?
It's just north of,
Doesn't have a 65th Street address.
so it's just south of 65th and Pendleton Pike,
The post,
Okay.
directly next to the U.S. Post Office.
You're talking about-
And we have literally
Pendleton
turned
Pike.
down,
It's a vacant parcel right now.
we've literally turned down in the 2 years I've been here, 4 to 5 other developments that wanted to go in there, including raw storage, including housing developments, just because of what we were worried about, the impact on the neighborhood. So this has all been done with them in mind, and you know how it goes when it hits the social media applicant. So I'm concluded unless anybody has any more questions. And thank you for your support.
Thank you, Dan.
Mr.
Is
President?
there anything else to come before the council tonight? If not, may I have an approval to adjourn this meeting?
so moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second for adjournment. Roll call vote. David Blunt,
Approved.
Cheryl Sullivan,
Approved.
Jerry Clifford,
Approved.
Melissa Howard,
Approved.
Ray Rohana.
Approved.
Thank you all
If
very much.
anybody would like to see those, I've got them here on my phone.
See you.